I usually talk about how you can achieve additional VA disability compensation, but there are certain instances where you may owe VA, right? It's called the instances of overpayments. There are various reasons why you may have an overpayment to VA. I'm going to talk to you about how you can avoid having overpayment, what you can do if your VA sends you a notice that you were overpaid and now they're going to stop benefits, and how you can apply for a waiver so that you don't have to pay it back. Let's talk about it. If you're new to the channel, I'm LaRita. I'm an attorney. This is a full disclaimer, right? The information I provide on this channel is just that, information only. It does not establish an attorney-client relationship. What I usually do is leave in the description box some resources to veteran service officers and other attorneys who can represent you if you have an appeal before VA. So I just want to put it out there. I do try to provide as much detailed information, but if you do have any questions, you can put it in the comment section. Okay, so as I mentioned before, a lot of times people are looking to see how they can get additional VA compensation benefits. But there are certain instances where you may have been overpaid. I'll tell you the popular instances, and hopefully you can make sure you avoid it. So oftentimes I see it when a veteran, he or she is receiving additional compensation for a dependent spouse, and they do not report to VA that they have been divorced. That's one instance. Another instance is the VA has sent them information about confirmation of certain things, and they haven't changed their address with VA. The third situation is, let's say a veteran is also does reserve duty and hasn't submitted a paperwork to say whether he or she would like to have reserve pay or VA compensation pay while on drill, right? So if you can't receive both, and oftentimes veterans may owe VA because of those things. I'm going to just start with those three things because those are the most popular. I'm going to say what you can do to make sure you avoid that, and what you can do, let's say you do owe the money, how you can have it waived. Before I go into it, I always like to figure out where our viewers are watching from. So if you are a current or active duty, or if you are a veteran right now, comment in the comment section which branch of the military you served in. We have Army, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Navy, and Air Force. Comment in the comment section and let me know where you are, where you serve. Some people have served in multiple branches of the military, so let me know in the comment section. Okay, so I mentioned that VA may send you paperwork saying, hey, we overpaid you too much money, and now we need to actually stop payment or start recouping the payments that we overpaid you. Oftentimes, sometimes veterans don't know, sometimes they do know. In the instances sometimes where they, let's say a veteran failed to report that they were divorced and then they got remarried, in the interim, try to sort out when they were entitled to benefits and when was the period of time where they were a single veteran and were not entitled to dependent benefits. Here's something that you need to make sure you do. If you get divorced, within 60 days at maximum, you need to report to a VA regional office, not the VA hospital, not your doctor, because those two are not always connected in regards to updating your compensation disability payments. Sometimes I see veterans say, I told my doctor, why didn't my doctor tell whoever needed to be told over at this part of the VA? In the perfect world, that perhaps could happen. But since you are receiving disability payments, that's not the same as receiving treatment at a VA hospital or clinic. Sometimes the two systems don't talk to each other. So since you know you receive compensation from VA Veterans Benefits Administration, you need to report to a regional office and show paperwork of your divorce decree so that the VA can actually process that for you. Okay, for those of you that also, I gave the example of, let's say you are a reserve duty and you have drill days that you have to do. Usually VA sends you a form that says, hey, do you want to waive one or the other? Waive your disability compensation while you're on drill days, or receive your disability compensation and waive your drill pay. Either way, you have to say which one you want to do. If you end up getting paid for drill pay at the same time you're receiving VA disability compensation, it's going to create an overpayment, which means that you're going to owe money, which means VA is going to withhold payments from you in the future. Make sure you submit the form. I'm going to make sure I tell you the form name so that you can actually submit it if VA perhaps has forgotten or doesn't know that you had drill pay. Okay, the form is VA Form 21-8951. and it's waiver. So it's saying I want to waive either one or the other. So make sure you submit that. If you have drill pay, you know you do a certain amount of drills, reserve duty a month, make sure you submit that so that you don't create an overpayment. Here's another popular reason why overpayments happen. So VA sends you some information and you as the veteran don't get it. Because why? You didn't update your address. And a lot of times this happens similar to the situation where I told one part of VA and the other part of VA didn't get the information. But sometimes veterans just don't remember to update information, update their new mailing address. I know there's a lot, excuse me, I know there's a lot of things to remember when you're moving. Remember to notify VA because you are receiving compensation payments. You need to make sure that VA is on notice of what your new address is so that they send you any new information. They ask for updated information. You can receive the notices in a timely fashion. Okay, so those are the ways to prevent it. Let's say it wasn't prevented and you were issued an overpayment notice. There are certain things that you can do. First, you can contest actually the amount of it. You can ask for a paid and due audit to say how much you were paid, how much you were due, to make sure that the amount is correct. So it's going to challenge the validity of the debt. That's the first you can do. You can also challenge the validity of debt and say, this wasn't my fault because of administrative error. You can say, I don't owe any money because I did what I was supposed to do. VA was totally at fault with this and it wasn't my fault. I didn't even know that I was being overpaid, and show that you did your part on your end and that you had no knowledge that you were being overpaid. That will be challenging the overpayment based on the validity of the debt, based on administrative error. The key to administrative error is that you can prove that you did what you said you did. You notify VA of your divorce, or you notify VA of your change of address, and VA just did not act in a timely fashion, which ended up creating the debt. The second part to that, though, is that you didn't know that you were being overpaid, right? A lot of times this happens if, like, the overpay amount is close to, the payment that you were supposed to receive versus the payment you weren't are very close in number. Or I see instances where veterans like, well, I wasn't paying attention that I wasn't supposed to receive this higher amount because it's an automatic payment to my account. You have to prove that you didn't know. Not just that it was VA's sole responsibility, but that also that the veteran did not know that he or she was receiving the overpayment. That's where you can actually have it determine that the debt is invalid. Okay, so if we find out the debt is valid, the amount is correct, and now you want waiver of the actual debt. This is the amount that's due. I owe the $5,000. Can I have it waived? There are certain considerations that VA and the Committee of Waivers and Compromises considers when they're deciding whether you're entitled to a waiver of the debt, meaning you don't have to pay it. We know we overpaid you, but you don't have to be responsible for paying it. You weigh the faults of the veteran versus VA. Who was at fault more, right? You also decide whether there would be a financial burden to the veteran if he or she was required to repay it back. So what they do is actually to fill out a financial statement, a status statement saying this is my income, these are my expenses, and let's say I'm over. Oftentimes, I'm overspent. Oftentimes I see veterans say, I can't afford to pay this back, but then when they do their income and expenses, it says they have an extra $1,000 a month after they paid all their bills. That's not going to convince the committee to actually waive your debt. So you have to prove that there's actually a financial hardship in paying back something that VA is saying that you were overpaid on. The committee is also going to consider whether it be unjust enrichment if they did not require you as the veteran to repay the money. Would you benefit because of this, or if the money was basically used for the purposes which, let's say in the instances of a spouse, you were given money for one spouse, you divorced that spouse, but you were remarried right away. Usually that doesn't happen. It's usually like a 6 months to 1 year period where you were a single veteran. But let's say the money was used to support your household. You have to prove that you would not be unjustly enriched as a result of repaying the debt. You also have to say, whether it would defeat the purpose for which it was given. So let's say you were in instances where, let's say a veteran was overpaid for pension benefits. Pension benefits are given to veterans who have a certain income level that is very minimal. And if you perhaps made over that amount, you may be overpaid for pension benefits. But the idea is to make sure that you can sustain your monthly expenses. If you prove that, repayment of the debt would defeat the purpose for which it was given, then the committee may actually grant a waiver. I want to caution you when you're applying for a waiver to be honest about your situation, because the committee does their own research about what's happening and why why the waiver was created, why the overpayment was created, and whether overpayment is entitled. The good thing about overpayments, though, is it's equity and good conscience is the standard, versus in the world of disability compensation, it's pretty much black and white whether the standard is at least as likely as not that you should be entitled to service connection. So this is an area of VA law where VA wants to say, you know what, let's do the right thing. Although it was the veteran's fault for not making us aware of certain changes, based on these other factors, we should still grant a waiver of overpayment. Do not lie about anything. I've seen cases where veterans say they don't make any money. The committee did a quick search and they're like making over $200,000 selling real estate. Of course, you're going to be required to pay back that money because you were basically trying to fraud the government out of money that you were overpaid. So be honest when you're applying for the waiver. The waiver is appropriate in certain situations. So make sure if you do get a notice saying that you were overpaid, make sure you go through the certain steps to apply to make sure that the debt is valid first. And if you determine the debt was valid, then apply for a waiver and see what they say. You can always appeal the committee's denial if they do deny the waiver up to the Board of Veterans Appeals. Hopefully this information in this video was helpful to you. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button. It pushes out to the YouTube algorithm so that it can help other veterans just like you learn more information about VA law. Thank you. See you in the next video.